We're back with another episode of AppStories. We've got a special episode all about WWDC. This is the second one we're doing. We're going to be doing these all throughout the week. I'm here. I'm John Voorhees, and I'm here with Federico Fetici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, and good morning. And good morning again, John. It feels like only a few hours ago that we were chatting.
That's because it was only a few hours ago.
It was just a few hours ago, just after the keynote, and now we're back here before sessions begin, but we got some other topics to talk about.
We do. We're going to talk about notes and reminders and maybe a little more iPad stuff. But first, before we get to that, Federico, I want to talk about our giveaways that we're doing all throughout WWDC in the Club MacStories Plus Discord community.
Okay.
We're also doing some in the weekly newsletter on Saturday. But today, going live this morning, as soon as we finish this recording, are Marvis Pro and Parcel, the parcel tracking app. So those will be live today. We'll have them, I guess we'll take submissions till the end of the week or so. I'll set that up and we'll get going from there. It'll be fun. We'll have a couple of these every single day.
Very nice, very nice. And we're doing, as you mentioned, in Discord and in weekly, so all kinds of club members can get in on this giveaway action this week that we're doing, and it's very nice. Okay, so I figured, given that we don't have WWDC session material yet, we're recording this my 4 p.m. local time. I believe sessions go live at my 5 p.m. But I wanted to continue our discussion from last night, from the first episode we did about iPadOS 16. And then I wanted to, this is AppStories. So obviously I want to talk about a couple of apps that are getting some major updates in iOS and iPadOS 16 and macOS Ventura. Is it Ventura? It's Ventura. It
is.
These macOS names, they take a while to, I always take a while to sink in. It's Ventura now. It's no longer the Monterey era. It's easier with numbers. I don't know why. Anyway, so iPadOS 16, something that I wanted to expand upon last night and we ran out of time, is this idea of desktop class features in iPadOS 16. So I thought it was especially interesting how Craig Federighi, during the iPadOS segment of the keynote, how he sort of presented the iPadOS as a platform and how he pitched sort of this effort, right, from Apple to say, we want to take the best from iOS and the best from macOS and combine them in something new and unique that is iPadOS. But specifically about desktop class features, he said, we took a look at these Mac features, these functionalities that people using macOS 10 before and then macOS, they've been using for years, right? And we figured it's time to bring them to the iPad because, on the iPad, a lot of apps started as this, the apps on iPad were these adaptations from the iPhone that had maybe a different layout, but always the same functionalities. But the iPad over the years, especially starting with the iPad Pro with the smart keyboard and later, 5 years later with the Magic Keyboard, it became this new type of computer. We've talked about this many, many times before on MacStories and AppStories. And so it doesn't really make sense anymore to optimize for the iPhone side of sort of this interaction spectrum that we have. We have Mac on one end and iPhone on the other end. And iPad is sort of in the middle, but for many years it was always skewed toward the iPhone side of things. So these apps that were always touch first and these layouts that were never really, desktop-like or desktop class. And this story started to change 2 years ago with iPadOS 13. But with iPadOS 16, Apple is taking it to the next level. And so I really like their approach here because what they've done is they've taken a tour of the entire system and they've made a list of features.
Yes.
And they said, okay, let's make a list of all these features that we consider, desktop class features in apps. We'll make a list and we'll just bring all of them to iPadOS. They literally have a list. Like if you watch the keynote again, there's a bunch of slides and they're just scrolling through this list of functionalities that they have brought over from macOS to iPadOS. And I wanted to hit on some highlights, John, if you allow me.
Okay.
Really, the most of the changes are in some key apps like Files, for example. There's a ton of updates in Files. This is the kind of stuff that we've covered so many times before. You texted me yesterday during the keynote, and you told me, I can't believe how many wishes we're getting in this keynote.
No.
Like all these items from our wish lists, not even from this year, but from previous years, stuff that we never even possibly imagined, like, oh, this is so nerdy, they're never gonna do this. But for instance, showing file extensions in the Files app, that's a thing now. You can
it is.
You can show all file extensions. There's a new view options menu in Files, and you can finally show file extension. May seem like an obvious thing. It's been available forever on macOS. That's exactly the point. It's coming to iPadOS now too. You can expand folders in list view. There's this new menu, which I believe there's going to be sessions about this. This new file and document menus that are available in toolbars in iPadOS 16. This document menu, you can actually see it in action if you have shortcuts installed for iOS 16 or iPadOS 16. If you open a shortcut, you will see that in the title bar at the top, there's a downward-facing triangle icon. If you tap that icon, you get this new file and document menu. This menu has default options like rename, move, duplicate, export, and you will find the same menu in Files, in other document-based apps, and developers can use it too. So it's like this consistent contextual menu for files and documents.
Yeah. That's a really important. I think it's a really important point because it's one of those things that creates consistency across the entire setup for the iPad. I mean, there's also things like save and close. It's the kind of things you'd find in the file menu on the Mac, and it's here now. And I don't know. I don't want to interrupt you, Federico, but toolbar customization to me is
I was gonna mention that. Yes.
That's something you can do on the Mac for years. I mean, things like Safari and all sorts of apps you can do that in.
Yeah, customizing toolbars. I remember, getting my first Mac in 2008, and that was already possible. Like I remember customizing the toolbar in OmniFocus 2 or OmniFocus. Yeah, it was OmniFocus 2, like 12 years ago or something, and that was already a thing on macOS. And now, do you remember, John, when it was possible in iPhone OS? It wasn't even iOS, but you could customize the top bar in apps like music. There used to be, remember that? There used to be
there was a UI for it.
There was the UI for it where you would tap on the rightmost tab, and it was like the More tab, and you could go in there, and there was a grid of icons, and you could drag the icons into the top bar to modify which items you wanted to get at the bottom of the screen. And this is...
Right, like albums and playlists and songs and composers and compilations, all that stuff.
Yeah. This is sort of the same idea, but done in a more Mac-like fashion. So, there's this new ellipsis indicator, this new, 3-dot button in toolbars. So at the top of the screen on iPad. And when you open it, you get this consistent UI element, which is called Customize Toolbar. And you will see, it's just like on the Mac, but with a fresh design. You will see which items you can still drag in on the toolbar. And of course, the toolbar, the icons, they start jiggling, and you can remove them from the toolbar if you don't want them there. So for example, today I customized the toolbar in Mail on the iPad. I wanted to get the mark as junk shortcut in there, and I wanted to remove something that like flag, that I never flag my messages, and I was finally able to customize the UI to my needs. This is like, we've done episodes of AppStories about this very idea of like, let users customize interfaces and menus, features like toolbar customization or smart lists and smart folders, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But that's the idea, right? You're bringing a desktop class feature from the Mac to the iPad, and it still makes sense, and it still works.
This episode of AppStories and all of our WWDC coverage is brought to you by Collide. Collide sends employees important, timely, and relevant security recommendations for their Linux, Mac, and Windows devices right inside Slack. Collide is perfect for organizations that care deeply about compliance and security, but don't want to get there by locking down devices to the point where they become unusable. Instead of frustrating your employees, Collide educates them about security and device management while directing them to fix important problems. Visit collide.com/appstories to sign up today. That's KOLIDE.com/appstories. Enter your email when prompted to receive your free Collide gift bundle after trial activation. At Collide, they know that end users are IT admins' most significant untapped resource and key to solving the most challenging to fix security issues. Things like instructing developers to set passphrases on unencrypted SSH keys, finding plain text two-factor backup codes and teaching end users how to store them securely, and convincing employees to uninstall evil browser extensions that may sell their browser history. Those are just some of the use cases that are not solved by locking down your employees' devices. You can try Collide and all of its features on an unlimited number of devices for free for 14 days with no credit card required. Try it out at collide.com/appstories. That's KOLIDE.com/appstories. Our thanks to Collide for their support of AppStories and all of our WWDC coverage. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I'm really excited about this. Another thing that's interesting to me, Federico, is this multi-select context menu where you have a custom context menu when you select multiple items, because that's something, it's batch processing basically, which is something that is, been on the Mac again forever, but not something you could really do on iPadOS. You had too many situations where you might be able to select multiple things and delete them all, but that might be all you're able to do. And now you'll have a special multi-select apply to all type of situation for things in Finder or things in the Files app and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and this is very easy. You just select multiple files, whether it's via gesture or via the select button, and then you just long press and you get this stack with the context menu. And you get, some actions like copy, move. I don't see rename in the options now. It'd be nice to have the same rename menu that you get in the Finder on macOS, with the rules for appending or prepending to a name. Something that I see in the context menu of Files, another desktop class feature with an asterisk for now, is quick actions. So we now have quick actions in Files on iOS and iPadOS 16. But I don't see my shortcuts in there.
Oh, well. Oh, well.
So beta 1, let's just say that this is beta 1 and maybe, just a bug, and they will, because it would be so weird, right? You have the toggling shortcuts and you have quick actions in Files, but right now those quick actions are just the default ones. So we'll see how that evolves. What else? Obviously, there's a new open and save file dialog. And this is very Mac-like now. I was running one of my shortcuts on the iPad today, the upload images shortcut that Alex made for us at MacStories. And when you run that shortcut without an input, it asks you, hey, where is, actually your image that you want to upload? And it used to be that it would open this basic list in iOS 15 to prompt you for selecting an image. Well, now it shows you an actual open and save dialog that is like, bigger. It's got a sidebar on the left side. You can navigate between your photo albums. And the same is true for Files. You got a proper open and save dialog for Files. So both picking photos and picking documents from the Files picker, much, much better. And again, inspired by the Mac. Something that I was not expecting to see. I don't know if you caught this, John, but there's on iPad, there's now support for the status bar in Safari when you hover over a link. So
that's nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you go to Settings, Safari, there's a new option called the Show Links on Hover. You enable that, and when on the iPad with the pointer, when you hover over a link on a web page, it shows you the floating status bar in the bottom left corner of Safari. So you can see the destination URL on hover. Very nice.
Yeah, I do that all the time on the Mac.
Yeah, always.
I'm glad it's on the iPad. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many other little things, Federico. The search menu is the search box is in a more standardized place across a lot of Apple's system apps. There's find and replace in a lot of places now. Undo and redo. Mm-hmm. These are things that feel like, they seem very obvious and basic, but they just aren't things that you could always do in iPadOS unless there was a third-party app that did their own custom version of it. Another one that I think is kind of cool is the ability to copy and drag contacts into Mail. I haven't tried this yet to see exactly how that works, but that should make getting emails out a lot easier too.
Yeah, and lastly, I also wanted to mention, just because I was not expecting Apple to announce this feature, Display Zoom on iPad is getting this new pixel density option. It's called More Space. And basically, Display Zoom is getting this new zoom level for pro users who want to see more content on their iPads. So, it used to be that you could get zoomed and standard. Now there's More Space as a new option, which is basically display scaling, right? It's another feature from macOS that has existed for years. And now you can have this on the iPad Pro and iPad Air, I suppose, as well. And it really does make a difference. Obviously, UI elements and text, they grow smaller as when you enable the More Space option, but that's the idea. You got smaller UI, but you get more content on screen. I had a comparison screenshot in the article that I published last night to show the difference between standard view and More Space view. And I can tell you, I've left it enabled since last night, used the iPad for a few hours last night and today. Trying to go back to the standard view now feels just like using zoomed view back when standard was the only option. Like my eyes adjusted immediately. Now I'm pretty...
Well, that's good to hear.
I wear eyeglasses, so my eyesight is usually terrible. But with eyeglasses and using the sort of the not the smallest font setting on an iPad, but like the second from the left, it's okay for me. But now going back to standard, it's like, oh man, this is too big now. I want to use more space. So what I've noticed though is that it causes a problem for my Apple Frames shortcut though, because it changes the resolution. Yeah, so I'm gonna need to work. I'm gonna need to work on that because I gotta see what the resolution is like when you take those screenshots.
Very interesting. Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have to experiment with that myself. There are a lot of instances when you want to have more on the screen, and that makes me think that it'll work a lot better with more complex apps that have a lot of different UI elements that you need to see at one time, or maybe you're editing a timeline or something like that. All right, Federico, what else is there? Do you want to cover notes or reminders today too?
Yeah, I want to talk about especially reminders. Maybe we can save notes for another episode, but especially reminders, I think, is getting a really awesome update on our platforms. It really is this year. First, allow me to start from the most power user feature of reminders, which we did not expect Apple to actually build, but they did it last year. Smart lists. So we talked about smart lists in reminders for a while on AppStories, and our key problem with this feature was the lack of more advanced filters. Really, the main problem was that you could only filter by all conditions. There wasn't an any filter, and that's possible now. So in iOS 16, you will be able to filter your criteria for a smart list in reminders by all or any condition. But that's not all, because they have added a bunch of additional options. So you can filter by tag, by list. And then, list wasn't possible before. And it was one of my main issues with the feature was that you couldn't filter by list, but only by tag. And the existing options like dates, times, locations, priority, and flag, they've gotten new options as well. So for example, in the date filter, you can now filter for before a date or after a date or on a specific date. So you have greater freedom there as well. And if you combine all these new filters with the fact that you can choose to build the list based on matching all the filters or matching any of the filters, now it becomes a lot more interesting to create a smart list in reminders, because it's sort of approaching, I don't want to say OmniFocus levels of fine-grained controls for like things like custom perspectives, but it's very close now, because I mean, you get seven categories to filter for and 2 conditions, so any and all. Honestly, I just think at this point, notes is the one missing filtering criteria. And title. I suppose you still cannot perform searches for the title of a reminder or the contents of the note field of a reminder. Those would be the 2 missing options still.
Right. The note field did get a little bit of an upgrade too. It's now got rich text in it, which small thing, but kind of nice. I think that's a good addition to it. I also like the ability that you can group now by time and date, right? So if you're one of those people who likes to kind of divide your tasks between morning, afternoon, and evening, for instance, you can do that now.
Yeah, that's actually done by default in the new Today view. This is very things inspired, things by Cultured Code. Basically, now the Today list in reminders has automatic sections for morning, afternoon, and tonight. And based on the time that you schedule your tasks, they will obviously they will go into the Today view, but they will be automatically categorized in the specific section based on the relative time of day. Scheduled, the scheduled view has a similar update as well, in that it comes with new week and month summaries. So for example, right now, if I scroll the scheduled view, I see today, tomorrow, then I see the rest of the week, then I see the following week, and then I see at the very end a section that says rest of June, and another section that says July, and then a list of months going all the way to May 2023. Yeah,
that's nice.
This is great for long-term planning, I suppose. It's going to be nice to have those sections.
There's also templates, Federico. That's something that a lot of people have wanted for a long time, And not only are there templates that you can reuse yourself from task to task, but you can share them with a link, which I think is nice. I mean, I think we'll see a lot of, packing list item type lists that people will create and share and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's really impressive how you can share all of these templates. We just get a link, and there's a UI in reminders that shows you all of the templates that you've created. You can copy the link, share the link with somebody else. You can install templates from other people's links, obviously, as well. And when you create a new list, you can say, create a new list, but import all the items from a template. And when you create a template, you can also choose to include tags, it's nice to have this setting, because maybe I want to share a template, but I use a specific set of tags. You don't use the same tags. So I can say, exclude the tags from the template when I'm sharing it as with somebody else. So again, templates for me are like smart lists last year. I really did not expect Apple to build this in reminders, which, is obviously becoming, a proper task manager at this point. But what I like about it is that you're not forced to use any of its advanced features if you don't want to.
Right.
You can still keep using it as, reminders with 1 or 2 lists and primarily interact with it using Siri. But if you want to, it's got that ability to grow with you as you become a more advanced user of reminders. And so you can do things like, multiple filters in smart lists. In iPadOS 16, the toolbar is customizable. So it's one of the apps that has a customizable toolbar. You can have your shortcuts for dates or tags or locations in there, in the upper toolbar. And it's got these other nice to have improvements for power users. Like, for example, remember the 4 smart lists at the top of the sidebar? The ones made by Apple that you couldn't customize at all? Well, now you can put any of your lists up there. You can pin any list from reminders and put it there, so that your lists or smart lists can become top-level items in reminders. And you just do this by long pressing a list and saying pin.
Can you unpin the default ones that Apple creates for you? I have not tried it yet.
Oh yeah, you can hide them. Yes, you can.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So for example, flag. Yeah, I just hit it. Yeah. and all. Let's see. Yeah. So now I only have today and scheduled at the top of reminders. And
Very nice.
Finally, something else I wanted to mention. There's a new view for when you combine lists in a group. Totally forgot that this feature existed, but if you drag a list, whether it's a regular list or a smart list, onto another, you create a group. And now there's a new combined view for those groups, so that if you tap on the name of a group in iOS and iPadOS 16, you get a view that has both. So there's a combined view organized by list that shows you both lists at the same time. So this is nice if you have, like, for example, I have two smart lists, one called Club Writing and another called Club Editing. I combine them in a group called Club, and now when I tap on the group, I see one list, but they're split in two sections. So, and it's nice because you get the header. It's nice and large and colorful. So it's nicer than using tags or other separators for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great way to organize things.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it when it comes to reminders. Obviously, there's a...
Very nice.
I still have to play around with the shortcuts integration. Want to see if there's some bug fixes for shortcuts there. But I'm really impressed with what they're doing in terms of continuing to grow reminders for power users in a way that until a few years ago, it would have seemed unthinkable. But I guess we're used to it now. Reminders is, the reminders team is doing a pretty awesome job at Apple, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we should be surprised anymore when we get these advanced features. And it really is the kind of thing I look at this and I think, well, this might now be at the point where this could be my main task manager. I'm going to have to check it out on the Mac as I get ready for the Mac OS review in the fall. And I'll probably be switching over to this for the summer just to take it for a spin and see how it works out. But I'm really impressed with the way you can organize things in particular and filter things, because that kind of power really makes it easy to deal with lots of projects, lots of lists, but in a way that's not cluttered and messy, because you can filter down to what you want to see and have all the other stuff hidden. All right, everybody, that's it for today's WWDC episode of AppStories. I want to thank our sponsor again, and that is Collide, our sponsor for all of WWDC. We're going to be doing an AppStories Plus post-show segment with Q&A that we're taking live in our Club MacStories Plus Discord community. If you want to join the club and join in on the fun all week long, listening to us record these episodes live and ask your questions, just go over to plus.club and learn more about the club and sign up. Federico and I are on MacStories.net day in and day out, especially this week writing away. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram too. Federico is at Viticci, that's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you tomorrow, Federico.
Ciao, John.